I go get a DEXA scan, and they found out that I had early onset osteopenia.
Okay, so what is all that? Those are big words. What's a DEXA scan?
So a DEXA scan is where they're basically going to find out your bone density. So, and we lose bone density, but you wouldn't have osteoporosis till much later in life, not in your 20s, especially your early 20s. And so they were like, whatever you've been doing, to your body is not good for it. And you're going to be basically not walking if you don't start fixing what you're doing.
All right, hold up. This is like your 20-second Geena the Latina PSA. I need you to like, comment, subscribe below because we want to keep this show going. So if you're liking what you're hearing, please do us a favor and like, comment, subscribe below, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Geena the Latina Show. That's the Geena the Latina Show. I don't know why I can't talk. Back to the show. Today's guest is someone I've known for 15 years, probably. If you're from San Diego, you've seen her on the TV. She's a news reporter and anchor from Fox 5, Daddy.
I do a lot of sports too,
okay,
though.
Yeah. Fox 5 San Diego. You're out and about doing all these things. But we were just talking about how we've known each other for 15 years in the TV world, right? And just like industry friends. But this is our first real sit-down conversation. And then we're choosing to do it on camera for you guys. But
it feels good. It feels really good. I was thinking about the first time that I went and I was on your radio show with Frankie and you. And for whatever reason, I was like, why? We did a hot dog slip and slide. I don't know if you remember this.
I do remember, actually.
And in my work clothes, we decided that we were going to do, I don't know if it was a dare or what it was, but we were going to go outside of the radio station, set up a slip and slide, and with water, ketchup, and mustard.
Hold up, pause. We got to take a second to acknowledge our food sponsor, Cravings Fruit Bar. Miguel, Fidel, what's up? They're out in Santee. If you live here in San Diego, they got tons of stuff. They got fruit, chocolate-covered strawberries. They got tortas. They got chamoy, everything. Follow them at Cravings Fruit with a K, at Cravings Fruit. All right, let's get back to the show.
I had to slide down a slip and slide outside, in Kearny Mesa. I have no idea why we did this.
Why did we do that?
I don't know. And I still can't remember. Maybe Frankie would remember.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. And those are the kind of things, the encounters me and Heather have had for years, years and years. Totally. It's always fun stuff. You're out and about in San Diego. You get to do all the openings of restaurants, but also different stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
and I think, I'm always at Padres, and I've done 3 Super Bowls now where they put me in a car, they send me across the country to wherever the Super Bowl is. And then, so a lot of people, they have me, kind of referenced with anything in San Diego, whether it's sports related or now I'm studying weather. So there's just a myriad of things. So I try to pretend to be San Diego's concierge.
You are. You're all over, right? And that's what's interesting to me because I've known you for 15 years. And after I launched this show, you shared with me something that I would have no clue that you've ever gone through, right? And because if you know Heather, she's like this on it. It's almost, I was telling my makeup artist about you before. I was like, she's one of those girls that you think it has to be fake because you're always so bubbly and nice, whatever. But she's actually really that nice. And because you see you on TV and you seem like you're always genuinely having a good, I don't think I've ever seen you. I'm sure you get in bad moods, but me, I've never seen you in a bad mood ever in the 15 years I've known you, right? And so you see this bubbly personality on TV, just loving life. And then you shared with me off camera, what you had gone through. And I wouldn't say, I'll let you share your story, but continue because it's a lifelong thing almost, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and what we're going to get to is she shared how she had an eating disorder and it got to the point where her bones broke, right?
Yeah.
And I'll explain. So let's take it back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you're a news reporter, where did you grow up?
I was in Orlando, Florida. I went to college at the University of Central Florida. And I feel like when you move out of your house, that you grew up in and you go on your own, you start to have something really interesting happen where you're kind of on your own, you're figuring out things. For me in college, maybe it was saving money and not eating as much. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But then something happens where people, I think, can gain the freshman 15, or you could possibly do what I did and turn it into the other direction where you just get really into exercise, really into it. And I had always been really fit. I grew up doing cheer, tennis, a lot of dance, and I was always into athletics. But I don't know why all of a sudden, getting into running was like my new thing. Like I just wanted to run all the time. But I don't think I really knew how to nourish my body with what I was doing,
Yeah.
right?
And before we get into this, I feel like running can be very therapeutic. Like you
Oh,
literally
yeah.
did a run this morning, right?
Totally.
But it's always the intention behind it, which I'm
Yeah.
sure the intention back then, which we'll get to, was different than your intention now. Your intention
Yeah.
now is you're healthy, you've run triathlon, you've done all these things,
Yeah.
right? But back then, was it running to lose weight, you think, or what was it?
Yeah, I think like your body's just always changing as a girl. I started getting into not only did I join the rowing team, so I started rowing, and then you had to be a certain weight to be in a certain
Oh.
boat.
Like they weigh you?
Yeah, but that's normal. It's like wrestling.
Okay,
So like
okay.
it's a sport like that where if you're in a lightweight boat, then you are weighed before a contest or, a race. And so I was kind of at this interesting teeter-totter of like you needed to be under 130. And I was like, like
And you're tall. How tall are you?
yeah, I'm 5'8".
5'8",
and so,
yeah, so that's thin.
yeah. But if you wanted to be in the varsity, like in the big boats, you needed to be like 160. Like you're like a girl that is like just strong and ready to tackle anybody,
Yeah.
which is great. I mean, those athletes are amazing. So in joining this sport, it was healthy for me, but then also not healthy because I was always on a scale.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd ever been a scale watcher my whole life. And I was really strong and really into the sport. But then all of a sudden, I was just staring at the scale, which I think so many women get into. And it can be
Yes.
detrimental because you can change your body in so many ways and look beautiful and change your form and your physique and not even worry about the number.
And not lose a pound even,
Yeah.
right? Because I've
Yeah.
had like people like, oh, you look like you lost weight. I'm like, well, the scale does not say that, but I probably have if I do the measurements and you know, and that's part of learning how to be healthy, right? So
Yeah.
what age is this? What age
So
are
I was 19. This is between 19 and 20.
you? Okay, and so that's the first time you start
And-
realizing that you're caring about what
Yeah,
what you are.
like
yeah.
I was like, in cheer, you're always watching yourself. Like
Yeah.
you're always like, I've got to wear this half top. I've got to be in this competition with, I don't want to jiggle, like all the things. So
Yeah.
I think no matter what, as a female, for me and my role in life and my sports I was in, like I was in tennis in a skirt. Like you always just wanted to look your best, but I wasn't that concerned about it. Like I
Yeah.
always ate. Like I was like, I love food.
Yeah.
And I still tell myself, like, I don't know if I'm like a fitness person with a foodie problem or a foodie person with a fitness problem, but I love it all.
and you're a foodie and you do fitness, so you could do both,
It's
right?
a balance. And that balance is hard to find.
Yeah.
It's so hard to find. So I remember, it was like, okay, I lost 5 pounds to comfortably be in my boat. Perfect. But then all of a sudden I lost 5 more. And
Just
then I
'cause?
lost 5 more.
Yeah.
And then I lost 5 more. And then at some point I was, 5'8" and like 110 pounds.
Which is really thin for 5'8". Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so there was a part of me where I know that women often look at eating disorders as something where it's like you're physically starving yourself and not eating a calorie, or you're throwing your food up, or there's other things like whether you're taking major diuretics and things like that, like pills and all
Yeah.
the diet pills and stuff. Instead, I was doing what people often prescribe as the healthy way to like exercise and eat less, but I was starting to eat such a small amount of food that it really didn't make sense for my activity.
So take us like, what would you eat compared to your activity?
So I would go and run like 10 miles.
Uh-huh.
And this was after getting off the water. So I would basically go and row from 5 to 6 a.m. in the morning with my team. And then I would run anywhere from like 6 to 10 miles. I mean, I would just get running. And then we had weights twice a week as well. And I would count out like 10 carrots to eat and like an apple and maybe a piece of toast.
All day?
Like, yeah, like
All right, hold up. This is like your 20-second Geena the Latina PSA. I need you to like, comment, subscribe below because we want to keep this show going. So if you're liking what you're hearing, please do us a favor and like, comment, subscribe below, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Geena the Latina Show. That's the Geena the Latina Show. I don't know why I can't talk. Back to the show. Oh my
kind of putting
gosh.
it out as like what I would do.
Okay.
And I don't know where my brain went. I don't know why. Like now I think about it, I'm like, first of all, I don't know how I did that because I just love food.
Yeah.
But I also am like, a part of me was like, you're saving money. Like you find ways like this.
Like I'm doing this because I'm a poor college student.
Yeah, like you find ways to be like, and then you stare yourself in the mirror and you love seeing your hip bones or
Yeah.
something very just next level weird. You
Yeah.
know, like why did I want to see my bones sticking out of my clothes and things like
It
that?
almost becomes
you know?
like an addiction, maybe an
Yeah,
obsession.
absolutely. It's an
Mhm.
obsession. Like
Yeah.
I would wake up and if I didn't see certain, bones sticking out, then I needed to maybe have less. Like, you're thinking about those things all the
Yeah.
time. And it's so interesting that the people around you, you often actually get positive feedback.
Yes, right?
People are like, "Oh, you look so
good.
good." Yeah, and I remember that, and my parents never said a thing. Like, they really didn't.
Do you think they knew though, or they just thought you
I
were
don't know how
losing?
they couldn't, to be honest.
Really?
Like, looking at some pictures, I'm like, yeah, like, I went to college and it did take time for my body to morph into like really tiny. But then I look at it and I'm like, well, I had ran my first full marathon. So it would make sense that I got thinner. Like I leaned out
Yeah.
because you're running a ton. I had trained to do my first full marathon and this was in 2007. So that made sense. But it didn't make sense, that I was like just not eating anything. And I always wondered, like, what do my parents think? Like, how do they think I'm buying food and paying my rent and all
Yeah.
of this? Like, it's just
Have you talked to them about it since?
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
what did you ask them like why they didn't
Yeah, I
say
was like,
anything?
did you guys ever think? And they're like, yeah, I mean, we just thought you were running a lot. It
Oh,
was
okay,
very
so
like
they didn't
matter
really-
of factly.
It's also probably because, and I'm not a parent, but you don't want to think that anything's wrong with your parents. So just like you were making excuses, they
Yeah.
were probably making excuses. Oh, she's just working out a lot. Her body's
Yeah.
changing, like I don't think a loving parent would purposely just, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think they're probably lying to themselves a little bit too, not you,
Yeah.
like, in general. Like you don't want to see your kid in pain. So it's just she's exercising a lot,
Yeah,
right?
and I think too, I would come home for the holidays, and the holidays, like, I would just equal it out. Like, I would always feel bad if I ate and didn't run, right? So,
Yeah.
like, that's where you don't want running to be that kind of. That's a bad relationship, right? With
Yeah.
your health is like thinking that you need to do something just because you ate something, right?
Yeah.
And like
a lot of people are like that.
Yeah,
Like,
like
if I'm gonna eat this, I need to go work out,
like
right?
now, yeah.
Now, yeah.
Or you feel guilty for eating food, which I think is really, really a horrible way to just live your life, right? Like that's so hard to think like just because I enjoyed a piece of avocado toast, like I have to go do 10 miles or whatever it is to burn it off. And I would look at like, what's the calorie counter or whatever. I had all the watches, all the things, like all the
Yeah.
Garmins you could have. And I'm like, I burned this many calories so I can eat this today. And
Yeah.
it's just like, man, that's so hard. I know so many people live that way.
So-
I know. And for some people, who are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and all of that, sometimes there is a way of life that you have to get to healthy again. So I understand that can be a good thing for, calorie counting and all of that can be so good for people who are going through tricky times health-wise. But for I think so many women in this world, we're just so concerned. And this was me starting my TV career.
Yes, we got to get into
To
that.
hell with like
Yeah.
that camera is like 10 pounds is so
Yeah.
real,
So
right?
let's get before we get into that, let's take
Okay.
it back to your parents. So you would go home for Christmas and you would eat. So they probably didn't think there was a
Yeah,
problem,
like I
right?
would have food on my plate and I wouldn't like be too weird about it, but I would always like go out for a run and like come back like hours later,
Looking back now, though, would you have wished them or someone else would have said something? And would that really have mattered?
I don't think it would have mattered.
It wouldn't have mattered,
Yeah,
right?
I don't think it would have mattered. I had my rowing coach did pull me in, and because they're looking at a scale,
Mhm.
and most girls are staying at their exact weight for races, right? And she pulled me in, and I mean, she's an amazing coach, and she was like, "Hey, I want to just like talk to you. Like, what are you eating? I need you to write down what you're eating and bring it to me." And so like I lied. I like fudged a
Lied,
ton and like
yeah.
put stuff down on it. And I was like, I feel good. I feel great. And she's like, okay, like let's just keep, checking in
Yeah.
and doing that.
So she was kind of aware. Again, I don't think people
Yeah.
realize it. Like they
Yeah.
just like, you seem healthy, you seem fine.
Yeah.
And like no one really
Yeah.
realizes it, right?
Yeah.
So you're in college, you're doing this, and you're starting your TV career.
Yeah, I had just gotten into broadcast journalism school and I was like, let's go. Like it's full speed ahead and get this thing going. So you see yourself on TV a lot. And
people don't
then-
realize that the camera does. How much do you think it weighs? I always say at least 15. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know, 10. The
10,
best
15.
thing that's happened to me in the last, 3 or 4 years is that my photographer, he's our chief, and he found a wide angle lens. And I'm like, I will stand in the middle of this wide angle lens to like,
Why? What does that do?
it makes you thinner. I mean, don't stand
Oh.
on the sides of it, but like if you're in the
do
middle.
we have wide angle lenses here? No.
I know.
Okay.
I am like, I look normal in this lens.
Yeah, because
so
so you have someone that's already has it. Would you say? Were you an eating disorder at this point? Would you
Or
say
I
that?
would call over-exercise, yeah, because
Over-exercise.
it is considered an eating disorder, but, at some point, I wouldn't compare myself with those who are just, like, wrecking their gut with, any kind of diet pills or, like, not eating a single thing. I was
Yeah.
never hospitalized for it or anything like that, but it is, like, this odd sense of control that you're
Yeah.
always battling with, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So you're there and bring me to so you're and then you're watching yourself on TV and trying to get into this world, right?
Mhm.
When did because I know you said you weren't hospitalized, but at some point
No.
your bones did break. So you
Yeah.
were,
So
you
this
know?
was like I've been doing this for 2 years now, like
Okay.
doing the same thing where I'm like barely eating anything, like just kind of like finding some sense of control and I thought I had and you're like not really losing too much now, you're just kind of like stabilizing, but you feel really good about being like rail thin and still working out and exercising. I was still training to do marathons and all of that. And so it's a couple years later where I had just done a half marathon and I go to step out of my bed and I literally cannot stand on one of my feet. I was like, I can't stand on one of my feet. Like, what in the heck? And it was like excruciating pain. So I just go to the doctor because I'm like, I literally can't walk. I'm like, I'm either crawling or like needed crutches or something. And so I go into the doctor and we get an x-ray and I had fractured my calcaneus, like your heel bone. So I had a stress fracture in my heel bone and they were like, you're underweight. Like there's a lot, can we kind of get you with a nutritionist and talk about what's going on here? And I was like, I'm good. I'm just a runner and I run a lot, all the
Another
things.
excuse,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just a runner. Like I
Yeah.
just run a lot. By the way, I hadn't had a cycle in, I don't know, 5 years or so.
5 years.
Mhm.
5 years
And
hadn't
just
had
thought
your
that
period.
was like, I'm an athlete. This is what happens to athletes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I go get a DEXA scan and they found out that I had early onset osteopenia.
Okay, so what
So
is all that? Those are big words. What's a
yeah.
DEXA scan?
So a DEXA scan is where they're basically going to find out your bone density.
Oh.
So,
Mhm.
and we lose bone density, but you wouldn't have osteoporosis till much later in life, not
Yeah.
in your 20s,
Not in your
especially your
20s.
early 20s. And so they were like, whatever you've been doing, to your body is not good for it. And you're going to be basically not walking if you don't like start fixing what you're doing.
By
So it was
like
like,
what age?
they don't have a number, but they're
Yeah.
like, first of all, we need you on calcium pills, like all of this stuff.
Like your bones shouldn't
And
be breaking like this at your
right.
age.
And they're like, and not only that, so this might take a really long time to heal because you're not nourishing yourself like at all, and we can
So they
tell.
knew right away?
I think they did, but we had a big honest conversation where I was like, okay, like if this is going on, it was just a wake up call, right? That I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, they're finding stuff. When you get a bone density scan done and they're telling you that you have the early signs of osteoporosis in your 20s, you're like, all right, that's it. Like, what do I need to do? Do I need to drink a gallon of milk tomorrow? Like, I don't even know what that means, but what is it, And it was actually healthy foods.
Yeah.
I wasn't even eating like leafy greens and like all of the things that your body really needs, right?
Yeah.
So
And we'll get into that in a little bit, but so many people like I see people around me and they think like, oh, I'm losing weight, so they're not eating. And that's just
yeah.
so unhealthy. I've
Yeah.
like really learned that like what you put into your body matters more than what you're taking out, right?
So much.
Like taking out, yes, of course, but you need to make like, okay, I'm eating healthy, but you have no leafy greens. Like that's what are you doing? You know what I mean? And so many people are uneducated on that, right?
Yeah.
So you're in the hospital, you break your bones. It's a wake up call.
Yeah.
Does it just flip the next day, or like what happens after that? Like, because I can imagine if you've been doing this for so long, you haven't had a cycle for 5 years, you haven't ate much, can you just switch the next day, or what happens? No,
like,
yeah,
absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think something that we were talking about in the newsroom is like I go to all these restaurants and like it still is always in my head,
yes,
right? And
Mhm.
then you still will like have always those lingering thoughts of like, all right, if I eat this, like, what do I need to do when I get off of work? Because our morning show, like, they just fed me like linguine when like a cheese wheel.
And her job is literally to taste food. Like she goes around at
know,
restaurants and she's always on food. We're like, oh man, that looks
Yeah.
good. You're trying some new restaurant, right?
Like, oh my gosh, like this is so not what I need to be doing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it actually is good, right? It's
Yeah.
really good to be like, guess what, Heather? Like, you ate that cheese wheel yesterday and you're not fat today. Like, cool, like cool experiment.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think it takes time. It takes finding, I think falling in love with my husband now, it was really cool to fall in love with someone who like, I don't know, we wine and dine. And then if we feel like going and working out the next day, and this is pre-kids, because who knows if we have time to do all that now. But,
Yeah.
it was like, we would go like sweat out, if we had a drink or whatever, more for like the health benefits
Yes.
as opposed to the fact that like he is someone who accepted me for who I am, for my
Yeah.
body, for what I look like, whatever it is. And I think finding that and then being able to find yourself is really good. I mean, I think probably it's more healthy to find yourself first, right? And then you find that person who
Yeah.
like feeds into you. And I know that's the narrative.
But sometimes
but
that
it
helps.
me.
You find someone that
Yeah.
helps you find yourself.
It was
sometimes,
really
too.
supportive and it was really cool. And I think, working on yourself can be a really long journey.
It is. It's always a
Yeah.
constant journey, right?
It's like definitely something that is a long journey. But yeah, I mean, I would say it took probably like a year or two where you're like, okay, I am training for this race, but like we're gonna go have pizza tonight and we're gonna go just enjoy, and I think it changed my my connection with running, right? And I found that it was almost more running I love for the mental health aspect.
Yeah, and I know you
more.
love it, right? But
Yeah.
before it was just like to lose weight,
Yep.
right? And now,
Yeah.
and so that's why I always say like doing things, it's always the intention behind it. You can do
Yeah.
the same exact thing, run the same 6 miles, but that you're not, the first part, you weren't doing it for the reasons. Now it's like for your
Yeah.
healthy and it probably is therapeutic for you or whatever.
Yeah.
Would you
Oh my
say?
gosh,
Yeah.
it's like you're a different person. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just be driving home, which a lot of us that's the hardest part.
I know.
So,
schedule.
we get up in the middle of the night. I get up at 2:45.
She gets up at 2:45 in the morning to be on TV by what time?
4:30.
4:30.
So our show starts at 4:30. I'm often on at 4:30. If not, I'm on right at 5, doing the forecast. And then I go out and about by 6. And so I'm out doing my thing. And yeah, I mean, on the way home after you've done your full workday, it's noon and there's like a decision to be made. You're like, all right, I'm either going to play Blink-182 on the way home and I'm going to like rev myself up and I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to play white noise and fall asleep halfway home.
Yeah.
And like be totally down for the count. And it's really hard because you kind of feel like garbage though after you do that, right?
You're so tired. People don't realize how emotionally draining our job is. It's like adrenaline, and then it just like crashes.
Mhm.
People are like, oh, well, you guys just talk for a living. You're just like, it's a lot every day on your body, right?
I joke that it's a cocktail party without cocktails.
Exactly.
Like every day.
Every day. It's chaotic.
Yeah. And you don't know the people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm meeting somebody new every day and I am teaching them how to be on camera with me every day. So
and you have to be on every day too, right?
It's a full training session for them because they've normally never been on camera, but they want to talk about their business and they're the ones that can do it, right? So it's really rewarding.
Yeah.
Right? Like at the end of the day, you're like, I just did this. This was amazing. And every day is rewarding, but you do leave pretty exhausted.
Right?
So yeah. So the run is almost like a reset for me. And I feel like the endorphins, all of those feelings are so much better than what I had previously connected running with, which was just weight loss. And so, I think it's really, really cool that I was able to transition that because a lot of people can't do that for something that, like maybe they were a gym rat and it was for weight loss. And they're like, that's it. I've got to go do Zumba or something
totally traumatizing for them to go back because it's too many memories of where they were. You were able to keep your same passion, but just change the intention behind it pretty much.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's great because I do love running. I think if you can be good at running, I don't know if you can be good at it, but I feel like I'm good at it.
Yeah.
And so when you do feel, it makes you feel accomplished and really good. So, and I've been sharing the love of running with my kids already. I mean, we're that weird family that's going to do a turkey trot before Thanksgiving and for all the right reasons. And I mean, how interesting is that I'm someone who can now healthily go and do a turkey trot where I'm like, but I'm also like, I'm run walking with my kids. I'm doing it for fun.
Yeah.
And I don't care that I need to burn these calories for a meal later. Like I'm literally doing it just to show them a good time.
Yeah.
And that to me is like huge.
Yeah.
You know?
And I have a question on that. Wait, before that, we got to drink our
yes,
drinks.
please.
Cravings, drink our
This
green.
is good too. It's not like super sweet. But
green. See? Healthy on the Geena the Latina show.
That's really yummy.
What? We're healthy. It was
it.
important for me. We can have like bad food here. We have good food here.
I'm all about it.
I wanted to ask you, so say someone, because so many women battle this like silently, even they don't speak about it. So if they're watching or listening right now, and they're like, okay, I get how you're able to now think about running healthy, right? But it wasn't like that in your 20s, like, you
No.
know, and so it took time. What could you suggest to start changing your mind frame about food, about exercise, where we're like, oh my God, like, oh, we have to be on a diet, to like, let's nourish our body. Like, what are some simple things? Because I'm sure there's a gradual change, right?
Yeah, and it's all psychological, right?
Psychological,
So
yes.
for me, I was looking for
Hold up, real quick. Like, subscribe, comment below, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the Geena the Latina Show. Okay, let's get back to the show.
control. We're all looking for some kind of control in
Control,
our
right?
lives, right? So what is that control for you? I think it's really sad that I couldn't find it like in my early 20s, that my control was literally like counting calories and, doing that. And there are other kids like going out to parties and like
Yeah.
whatever. And for whatever reason, I felt like the world was changing so quickly in that time of my life that this was my control. And, getting this many hours of sleep, which is probably healthier than going and binge drinking at a frat house. But,
Yeah,
like,
you said that, but
yeah, which is all good too, whatever your control is.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's finding what control means to you in your life.
yeah,
Life is nuts.
it
right?
is nuts.
It
Mhm.
is. And so that was my control at the time.
Yeah.
And so finding, like, letting that go and then finding center again, it's just so important. I wish that I would have had the tools that we all talk about now, which would have been like
No.
finding a therapist or meditation. But truly, I just had to do it on my own because I think that was
It was
all
so different then.
very taboo,
yeah.
and
now it's like,
yeah, and I didn't live in California. I lived
Yeah.
in Florida and then I moved to the South in North Carolina and was making new friends for my first time. I mean, when you get in TV news in your first market, you're moving, I packed up my little Chevy Cavalier and like with everything I owned, I couldn't see out the back window. And I drove it to my first job in North Carolina from Florida to North Carolina and was like, beep, beep, here we go.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think everything's so unknown, right?
Yeah.
So you just have this like one thing of control. And I guess that's what I chose.
And that's what, and so I
the
want to explain
time.
that just to go a little deeper so that people understand, is like, therapist once told me a long time ago, and it's a little different, but like for me, I grew up in a chaotic, like, family background. Like, it was just always something going on. And so, I started to control the things I could, when I at a young age, I was a straight A student. I was the best at athletes. I started to control the way I look, which later turned into a eating disorder, which, by the way, we've talked about this in another episode if you guys want to go back and listen. But you do start, like, when everything around you is chaotic, you start
Yeah.
to control. And for some people, that could be overeating too, or that can be other things. So
Right.
like when she's talking about like her life was a little out of control because she packed up her car and moved and
Yeah.
whatever else, really think about what is, it's not the food, it's usually something bigger, right? And once
Yeah.
you can recognize that, then you can start to work on yourself, correct?
Yeah.
Would you agree, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I
Mhm.
think it's really interesting how we use food for emotions.
Yes.
It's so interesting because even thinking about coming into the holidays and all of that, people relate so many certain things to happiness that are food,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm.
so as a mom, I've been like, oh, I don't want to reward my kids with food. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I've just been like, I don't know if I want that relationship to even start. Is that strange? I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean,
No,
I
it's not.
should
It's
probably
like-
talk
it's
to
like-
someone about this.
No, it's true. It's
Yeah.
like we're taught that even like a simple birthday cake, a big old thing of sugar, whatever, that's
Yeah.
what we give people to say happy birthday, when why couldn't
Yeah.
it be something else, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to ask you about as a parent. How do you, because now, like, I don't know, how do you deal with this food or teaching your kids how to eat healthy without making them feel like, you know what I mean, they're
Yeah.
on a diet? What do you do?
Yeah. I think that
Especially with what you've gone through.
I know. I think that no one would know this about our house, but you're always allowed to have dessert.
Okay,
which is
good.
funny.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
I just like it's always something little if you want it. If you don't, then it's just there.
Yeah.
And I think that growing up, there were a lot of like we couldn't have any sugar in our house. It was just forbidden. So it's like there's little things that are triggers that you're like, I don't know if that was a thing or if it was because I have amazing parents. I would
Yeah.
never want to be like, it was your fault that like you know.
But I always say everyone does their best that can. Even you as a parent,
Oh,
you're going to do your
for
best again. So in
sure.
their mind, they were like, okay, let's probably, I don't know your parents, but I'm just generalizing.
Yeah.
Let's take sugar out of our house because the kids shouldn't have sugar,
Yeah.
right? But then that could also cause which was not their intention, I'm sure, but like, you start to create like my mom did that with and she was just trying to make sure she was really healthy and we could
Yeah.
never eat fast food, right?
Yeah.
So I would sneak and go get Taco Bell. I would jump the fence, find some money and go have Taco Bell. And I remember in high school, I would always order a hamburger with a salad, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I never
Yeah,
was
yeah,
allowed to
yeah.
have fries ever. And one time, one of my friends like, "Why are you not ordering fries? Like, why are you just eating a salad?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Why am I?" Right? And which, by the way, now a salad's not that nutritious. You need to make sure it's like a spinach or whatever. Like now, I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I was like,
Iceberg lettuce for the
yeah. And
win.
so then I ordered fries for the first time in high school. I was like, "Oh man, these are good." But then you start to like, it does create a. So I would say, if as a parent, and my mom, I think she did the best she could. Right?
Yeah.
She was trying to make sure I was healthy in her mind. So
Yeah.
with each generation, it's our responsibility to try to teach the kids a different
Yeah.
way a little bit, right? So you do the best you can, right?
Yeah.
So I do like that you offer dessert and it's up to them because a lot of parents too force their kids to eat. What do you do? Like, like
Yeah,
the
no,
forcing the
I know. And my husband and I have been through this. And newsflash, like you're not going to be a perfect parent. Like, and
Yeah.
as soon as you can figure that out, you're like, great, we're going to be good.
Yeah.
But you try your best. You really do. And you instill like these beautiful things into your family that can be how you do your household. And it was really funny because he's a tad older than I am. And so he would say like, clean your plate. I'm like, why? And I'm like, but if you're still hungry for real food, then you should have real food. And then if you did want something sweet at the end of the night, we have like those little Trader Joe's cones that are like the tiny little,
Yeah,
whatever. I'm like, if you guys want that, that's totally fine. Because first of all, I think a lot of the time dessert for kids is just because you're going to tailspin into bedtime and then they're all hyper. So
Yeah.
it's not like you need like 2 giant scoops of ice cream before bed.
Yeah.
That doesn't help you anymore as a parent. But yeah, we have things around that are allowed. I think what I've done a lot of the time is if there's a reward for something, we like Lucy and I will go get our nails done.
Oh, yeah.
You
So
know
you're
what I
trying to
mean? We
make
try
not the
like-
reward food.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't know if that's just my thing because I felt like I didn't want to reward them with like cookies and cake.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to do that at our school too, where they don't bring sweets for school for their birthday. They do this beautiful sun celebration where you talk about how many years you've been around the sun. It's super sweet.
Cool. Yeah.
So I just think that was kind of cool too. But yeah, being a
Yeah.
parent, it's really interesting too to still break the cycle of what you went through, no
Yeah.
matter what. It's like, why is that still there?
Yeah.
And why can't I just get rid of that?
Yeah,
You know?
and I try to like in our household, like sometimes I don't like to call it a diet, but it still slips out of your mouth, or like
Oh,
and
totally.
I don't even look at it that way, but it's like a joke. But then I realize I shouldn't use those words around my boyfriend's son. You know what I mean? I don't want him to think that.
Yeah.
Like so we try to educate on like what you're putting in. Like, do you have veggies? Do you have the right
Mhm.
kind of veggies? Like spinach? But okay, cool. And like
Yeah.
if you want something, but. And I'm not even a full-time parent. I'm just like a step half-time. So I don't know how you guys do it.
I don't either. Honestly, I don't.
Yeah.
And you were saying like, oh, you're so bubbly, like all the things. And I'm like, oh, you should see me after 7:30 at night. It's like someone's pulled the plug on the robot and I
Yeah.
am just like a, shell walking around the house ready for everything to just shut down. 'Cause
Yeah,
that
that's
is
any
how it
morning
is.
person though, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you where you are right now because I think anyone that battles with an eating disorder, and there's so many different kinds, like there's anorexic, there's bulimic, there's, you said, over-exercising. There's just so many different kinds.
Yeah.
I feel like it is a lifetime battle. Like those thoughts always come. Where are
Mhm.
you at right now with that?
So I think it's interesting we're having this conversation because it actually had resurfaced a little bit during this holiday season. I don't know why. Like I put on a few pounds and it like sometimes in your 30s, you don't know why. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure. Like I'm doing all the same things and like just something happened. I don't know, or maybe I just retained some water. Like I could have drank more water yesterday and now I feel chubbier.
Yeah.
And I was like having to kind of look at some of my stuff on camera and I was like, man, like, you beat yourself up, you
Mhm.
really beat yourself up. And my husband and I have been wanting to go out to Steak 48.
Yeah.
And I mean, look it up. You are not dieting there. It is just next level, So I kept putting it off and like, we really needed alone time. And here I was being like, I'm not going to go out with him
Because then I'll have to eat
because I don't want to eat a meal like
a
that.
beautiful dinner, right?
Yeah, so I think we're going tonight.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm gonna
good,
do
good.
it,
and you
and
do it,
it's-
and you enjoy it.
It's so weird conquering your fears. Like it sounds so stupid to be like going to dinner is conquering my fears, but it really is. And I think that at the end of the day, you just have to be like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna remember how much fun I had in that moment.
Yes.
And then whatever it is that I need to do within the next few months to be less harsh on myself is what I
Yeah.
need to do. You just like honestly, you just have to love yourself.
Love
And
yourself.
it does take time.
It does.
Like girls in their 20s, I'm like, oh man, I wish I knew what I knew then,
Then,
you know,
right?
because
Yeah.
you just tear yourself apart. And it's like, whether it's your hair, your legs or your midsection. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would have never said those things to myself then. So I often put myself in this place, and I hope you do this
Yes.
too, where like I'm in my 50s and I'm looking at myself now and I'm like, what would I tell her? You know?
That's
And
great.
so like
That's
I think
great.
that's such like a beautiful moment to be like, just from like you are beautiful, like you're gonna shine now, like who
Yeah.
you are in your skin.
Yeah. That's
And
great. I don't do that. So that will be our thing to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just like a moment in the mirror, you know,
It-
whether it's like before your show, like radio
yeah.
show, but
Yeah.
you know, you've gotten yourself all put together and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, like
Yeah. Because
this
we
is
always want like either what we had or like, but you don't put yourself as like, if you're 50, you wish you were 30 or 40. If you're 60, you would not wish, but like you should. But then if you're 80, looking at 60, oh, I wish I was 60. You're
yeah.
always going to do that. So I think that, yeah, it is putting yourself in the present, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned meditation. Do you do that, or is there any other practices that you've found have helped you?
Yeah, so my husband does this 11-minute meditation every morning. I don't get to do that.
Yeah.
But I'll often like running kind of is meditation for me, right? And I know that I probably should find slower time, but I don't think it exists right now.
Yeah.
I definitely want to find it. I used to really love yoga, but right now I'm just not even finding it. What I actually do are these 15-minute power naps that I kind of am like listening to some kind of sound that would be from that 11-minute meditation, and it normally puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
Which I think in our industry might just be what you need.
Yeah.
So I normally give myself that. I'm doing school right now too in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
So I'll
what are you
do
doing
that.
school for?
So I'm continuing education in meteorology for
Oh,
weather.
okay.
So doing that, and so I'll take those 15-minute power naps, and then
I think
up
what
and
you're
at 'em.
hearing is that like I think if you're watching this and you watch different episodes, everybody finds what works for them, right? But I
Absolutely.
think there is a second that you do go like I know running is meditation. Like you're probably in the alpha brainwave. I know a lot about brainwaves. And so that's it. And maybe running may not be for you. Maybe something else is for you, but that's what you do. But you do take the time, even if it's 15 minutes a day for yourself.
Yeah, and I think too, in our chapters, we find what works for us, right? So, like in my next chapter, running might not be what works for me. It has to feel good,
Yeah.
right? And exercise has to feel good. And I think even on our morning show, when I find different outlets in San Diego, different studios, different whatever, I always tell people, I'm like, I see everybody under the sun in these studios, and it's because they're all finding what works for them.
Yeah.
And you should never force yourself into that. Now, the first few minutes of anything, you're kind of like, "Ugh, why am I here?"
Yeah.
But it should feel good
Yeah.
afterwards.
Afterwards.
You know?
And
Yeah.
and I always say don't give up. Like if it didn't, try something else. Try
Yeah.
something else. Not everything is gonna like I was preaching to one of the producers earlier about hot yoga because it works for me, but maybe it's not gonna work for her. And that's fine. You don't gotta go to hot yoga with me. But do it. But she says she gives everything 3 chances. 3 chances.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I have a lot of conversations. I was a spin instructor for like a hot minute. I would leave the morning show. This is pre-kids. And then I would go teach spin at Fit Athletic Club at noon. And it was really cool to have a group of regulars in there because it was always sad when they didn't come back. Like you're like, oh, I thought I really had them. And they were like on the train to like health and wellness and whatnot. But what I'd always tell them is I was like, honestly, like you have to think about your vital organs. And a lot of the time in San Diego and in California, especially, people are so focused on like a 6-pack or looking a certain way in a bikini. And I was like, to be completely fair, if you want longevity in life, like you're in this class today for your heart.
Yes.
Like that's what the cardiovascular benefits are in here. And you might look okay in a bikini. Like that could be a great benefit on the flip side in several months or whatever you decide, to do with your routine. And I was like, but honestly, like it's your body, you only get one, and you need to do this kind of stuff to keep it going.
And is that going to matter when you're 60 or 6-pack or your bikini?
Yeah.
You just want to be healthy and living and being able to walk and hang out with your grandkids and do those things.
Yeah.
Before we finish up, I wanted to go back to something because I think it's really important. I want to see because I think that how you said your intention behind your food. So say you want to eat, because me and my boyfriend, we try to eat healthy, like for the most part, right? But like last night we went and had sushi. If I was like, oh my God, we're dreading it, then you ruin that whole meal. So
Totally.
I always say once you commit to like, hey, we're going to go have sushi and this is going to be our meal and like enjoy it, like you're going to enjoy your steak dinner tonight, then it's like, why are you going to do it if you don't enjoy it? I guess.
Totally.
Like, you know what I mean? Because so many people, like, you put so much guilt around that one cheat meal you have or that one, and that's like just doing the opposite. Would you agree?
Yeah,
Like, so I always say,
100%.
I was telling my nephew, because he's on this fitness journey, I'm like, look, if you're gonna, like, you're doing good 90% of the time, if you're gonna go have it In-N-Out, enjoy it. Don't sit there feeling bad about eating
Yeah.
your quote unquote bad food, right?
I would 100% just stop calling things cheat meals.
Exactly,
Like,
right?
just, like,
Sorry.
it's
sorry.
like-
I'm working on this too. I'm working.
No,
I'm
no,
a work
and I
in
don't
progress.
mean you. I just mean in general for anyone
yeah.
watching. Like, that was really helpful for me because I was like, I think, if I wanted to call it a cheat meal, like, am I going out and like binge eating like 2 pizzas or like going so nuts that like my stomach hurts, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy really good food that was cooked really well by a chef who's worked really hard. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Or
Yeah.
you go to In-N-Out where it's like just delicious and that's what you want,
Yeah.
But I do think that is part of breaking the cycle.
Breaking the cycle,
Where
right?
you're like, just go enjoy it. And honestly, like do things where it's the holidays and you go walk through Trader Joe's and you found those peppermint stick things that are what on earth are the things that are like they're pretzels that are like covered in peppermint chocolate and something else. I'm like, yeah, get those on the way out and have a couple each day because it's not going to be a big deal.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's doing little things like that you're like, oh, I'm going to look the same in that skirt, even though I actually enjoyed a little bit of something that I really like.
Yeah.
And over time, little things like that are like, okay, and I'm not saying like go eat junk all the time, but I'm saying like take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And then if there's something, if you have a sweet tooth, like don't think
okay.
that that's so bad.
I know. And once I was able to change that, I really do feel like I changed because then like if I weighed myself, it was the same. So I was like, okay, like, and I enjoyed it and like, let's get back on it, you know? And I think you need to pay attention to why you're eating stuff. That's what I've been trying to do is like, so like, for example, yesterday when I decided like, let's go out have sushi was more like, it was my boyfriend, one of the producers and my nephew. And like, let's enjoy some quality time together.
Yeah.
We put in a hard work. It was my boyfriend's last day of vacation. Like, let's go have a dinner, So you're like paying attention, but also I've had times when I've like had a long day and I've been stressed and then I just come home and start eating. And I know it's not because I'm hungry. It's because I felt like I need to reward myself for my long day.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, no, I'm not eating right now because it's like I'm eating because it's for the wrong reason. So once I started to really pay attention to why I'm eating, even if I continue to eat that, at least you're aware of it. Like, is this really like a great celebratory thing? Like I'm spending some time with my husband, or is it if I'm eating because I'm stressed out or I'm depressed or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I think everything is so habitual, right? So I think morning show's so hard. As soon as someone brings something into that kitchen, you're like, I'm either going to take a bite or I am going to eat all of it. You know what I mean? And then I'm going to do it every morning, like whatever donut, whatever thing. And then you realize that your body actually doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good.
So
right?
that was like something I think that's really useful is just kind of like assessing yourself, right? Is being like, well, what did I eat that made me feel super good, right? Did I eat whatever was in the newsroom that day because everyone brought in their Halloween candy? Guilty. I brought in like pounds of Halloween candy, and I just like kept eating it. And I was like, I feel like I don't want to even exercise or do the rest of this day because I feel like garbage.
Yeah.
And so it is all about like, did you pack your stuff? Like, do you feel good about what you're eating? And then
paying attention to how you feel after has really helped me change because I know how I feel when I eat shitty food for a bad reason or when I eat healthy food for a good reason. But I also know how I feel like I didn't feel like shit yesterday after we ate sushi. I felt great because it was a great conversation, whatever.
Yeah.
So I know that sounds crazy, but there is an intention behind all those meals. So
it's all related,
just
right?
Just be aware of it.
Yeah.
And once I started being aware of it, it kind of changed my relationship with food. And it's a work in progress always, right?
Yeah.
Especially us being in front of the camera, it's a whole different thing. So do you still have your podcast or no?
Yeah, we have it. It's around. Like you can still listen to it.
So plug it right now.
So it's called The Whole Story with Heather and Ashley. And we started during the pandemic as a way to have a creative outlet. Like we really wanted something to do. We were telling stories after story wearing a mask and interviewing people with masks on. And I was just like, man, this is rough. It's like the same story over and over again every day. And it was just tough for everybody.
You're talking about for TV.
For TV.
For TV, so which is why you created the podcast.
For TV, we started doing this podcast outside of it. So it wasn't with Fox 5. It was just on our own and very labor intensive, as you know.
Yes. Right? People don't realize all the behind the scenes that goes into a simple quote unquote podcast.
It's so much. It was so much work, but so much fun. And so we were doing this, and we did 2 seasons. We did 8 or 9 episodes a season. We haven't done season 3 yet, but it's still there.
Okay.
You can still listen to it. So it's the whole story with Ashley and Heather, or Heather and Ashley. Yeah, I have to look it up that way. It's on iTunes and Spotify, so you can listen to it that way. And we had a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, getting to open up the conversation. It's called The Whole Story because we would literally get 5-minute interviews with people on the morning news, and you always left feeling like, I didn't get to really talk to them. There's more, right?
Yeah.
And so now we kind of do a deeper dive, get to talk to people that we just have really big stories, and more to share.
Yeah.
So
we'll do that. And then if they want to find you on Instagram or
Heather Lake TV, always sharing all the fun stuff around town.
Yeah.
So.
And then on Fox 5 every morning, you'll see her all around town.
Every morning. I'm like, everyone's like, how much longer do you think you can get up into the morning thing? I'm like, as long as my body will let me.
Yeah.
It really is a better shift. I think it's like the best shift you can do.
Yeah, because we're off and,
we're off of work at like noon in San Diego.
Yeah.
Like you're the whole day.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to finally sit down and have a conversation. Maybe we could do this off camera now.
I know. Yeah. I think we could get a cocktail or two.
Yes.
And the heel is completely healed, but heel is healed. I do think before we go, one thing that if women are going through this, don't be afraid to talk to a physician, even if you have slight aches and pains of what's going on, because what I learned in my journey is that you actually could be going through osteopenia for a really long time, to where the point is you're in your 30s with osteoporosis
and you don't even know.
And you don't even know it.
Oh,
and
wow.
so there's just a lot that women can be going through that they have no idea. And then their bone density in their hips is going bad. And that can lead to all kinds of spine-related issues, all kinds of alignment issues. And you're just sort of trekking along, running and feeling like you're kind of okay.
So are you saying, and I want to be clear, so if someone's watching this, if you start to feel pains, what kind of pains are we looking for?
So any kind of aches and pains that are maybe bone-related, where it's something sensitive to the touch, right?
Yeah.
Or the difference between a ligament and a joint pain than bone pain, right? And a lot of it does happen in the feet, because if you're a runner, right?
Okay, yeah.
So you can get a stress fracture pretty easily somewhere in your foot, and then that would lead to that. But a lot of women will get these Hoka shoes and then just keep running through it.
Yeah.
Because they're really, really cushiony, and I probably would have done the same thing if they were around.
So
at that time.
out.
So just go get checked out. I know that healthcare is a pain in the butt, but a DEXA scan is going to tell you all of those really useful pieces of information that can save your life.
DEXA scan.
A DEXA
Can you
scan.
spell that?
DEXA scan, and that's a bone density scan.
A bone density scan. So do you advise everybody to have that? Should I go get that if I don't have pains? Might as well, right?
Yeah, it can't hurt.
Yeah.
Because then you would know if you needed more calcium or whatever was going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then what was it called?
Osteopenia.
Osteopenia.
Is early onset osteoporosis.
Okay.
And you can reverse that.
You can reverse that. So that's why you're encouraging people to check it out early.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Osteopenia.
And without prescription drugs, right?
Yeah.
So you can do so many things holistically or nutritionally to really turn back the time.
Yeah. And you were able to, right?
Yeah. I'm good. My bones are not breaking.
So it's almost like a blessing that you were diagnosed with this at 20, how old were you, 22 or whatever you were?
Yeah.
Because now you've been able to become a healthy individual.
I know. And I'm moving on. So I want to run all 6 major marathons, and I've done 3 of them. So we'll get hopefully the other 3 under my belt at some point.
Look at you.
Yeah, at some point. Not in the next year, but at some point. I'm like, it's a lot.
Well, thank you, Heather.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.